welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. Back in your life, back in person, in the same room. Excuse the audio-only episode of last week, but situations curtailed. We ended up having to push the episode back to Thursday, we recorded it.
Yes.
And then people weren't available until late and yada yada yada. We got the episode out, we're back on the normal Tuesdays. Plenty to talk about this episode, I think it's safe to say. UFC London's in the books. We're going to be previewing UFC 291, touching on a couple of fight replacements due to injury. Usman Nurmagomedov is out of his fight against Corey Sandhagen. Stepping in is Rob Font. I think that's a pretty exciting replacement.
It's a bigger name, honestly. I feel a bit more excited for it, to be honest.
Easier fight?
I think so, but at the same time, we haven't seen Umar kind of tested at the higher level under the brighter lights. So, you know Rob's going to perform. You know Rob's going to come to bang. He's not a specialist in the same way that Umar is in both the stand-up and the grappling. So, yeah, objectively it's an easier fight. Subjectively, I kind of feel like maybe actually it's kind of a lateral move, probably.
We'll be touching on that, giving our full rundown of everything that happened at UFC London. Mixed night for the English and British fighters. Great night for Scotland. Ended up being about 50-50, it feels like. I think maybe just one or two more wins than losses overall for Britain and Ireland. But certainly not the magical nights that we had enjoyed last year. And certainly earlier this year, where it was a much higher win percentage. Huge card coming up this weekend. BMF title, Poirier versus Gaethje 2, Pereira versus Blachowicz, altitude. We're going to be talking about how much of an effect we think that's going to have, if it's going to change our picks, if it's making us more or less excited about the card. I know how I feel about it being at altitude. I'll be discussing that, as always, with Josh. I'm, of course, Matt. We are your hosts. He's the producer.
No Miguel this week, but should be back next week.
He's again in Pamplona. This time not running with the bulls. This time just seeing family. But could not be with us. He will be back next week. He will be watching the card, as we hope you will be as well. If you are watching this, please like the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Feel free to comment anything you feel or think down below. First on the agenda, UFC London. Let's start with the good. Do you want to go good first, and then we can talk
honestly,
about the bad?
I feel like the main event in terms of how you want to score it for like British fighters or English fighters, fucking more than makes up for everything.
Well, Aspinall, it was his comeback fight, out for a year, pretty much almost exactly a year, maybe just under, just over. Marcin Tybura was his opponent. I said in our preview show last week, I feel this is a guy that if he's anything close to the Aspinall he was before his knee injury, he should be running through without too much trouble.
Yep.
Tybura's 6 out of 10 everywhere.
Yeah.
Not solid, if not spectacular, in any one facet of MMA. And Tom Aspinall went through him like he should have done. With a bit of movement. Got caught a couple of times. Does get caught early in his fights when he's making his reads. But once he had the speed, distance, timing worked out. The step and elbow followed with the double jab, right hand down the middle.
Yeah.
It's everything you want to see. Athleticism, technique, speed, power, finishing instinct.
Yeah.
Guy looks killer.
And that right hand in particular, where it pulls down through like just straight through Tybura's jaw. Obviously it's the kind of shot that you have to throw a little blind because of the way the follow through takes your eye line off of it. But still, he measures the distance well. If he misses it, you're like, even if he misses it, you kind of like, it's not a bad one to go for at that point in time. Like the opening was there. It's nice to see that the rust didn't affect things like that. I mean, he looks fucking fantastic compared to before the injury.
I thought the best read was the step and elbow.
Oh, absolutely.
That was just perfect. Once he's done that,
Beautiful
rest
reads,
is- yeah.
but like that one wasn't so much distance. That was adjusting to the shortness of the distance, being
True.
inside and finding the target still. But like the actual double jab to the overhands, like it's you have to measure the distance before you go for it. Even if you miss, it's because the guy like understands what you're doing and gets out of dodge quick enough. Tybio couldn't do that because he's already kind of rocked and backing up, but just a beautiful shot. But like more just like the footwork involved and just making starting off from that distance and understanding that and having that trigger in your mind didn't look rusty at all.
No. And I'll tell you what I love about Aspinall. He's obviously got power in his shots, but it's not that I'm going to wind up and I'm putting everything into these huge haymakers and landing the way that we see Ty land or two of us land or Derek Lewis land or these kind of knockout artists land. He's like Pavlovich in the sense of like he's just landing good, solid, clean shots down the middle. He's not putting too much into them, and they're dropping his opponent. There was no wind up to that. It was just perfect elbow, get the distance with two jabs, follow through with the right hand, Tabura drops. And if you can be powerful without having to force it, keeping the technique and being able to throw fast and in combination, I mean, I think he can beat most of the heavyweights, man. The only question is what happens when there's a serious wrestling threat. We didn't really see it with Tabura. We know that Aspinall can grapple. We know that for a fact. But
well, if Sergey gets past Gon, then we assume that's going to be the next test.
Is it Pavlovich versus Gon?
I thought it was Spivak.
Spivak, yeah, sorry, of course, Sergey Spivak.
Oh, yeah, I probably should have been a bit less ambiguous there. My bad, guys, my bad.
Pavlovich has got his eyes set on higher things, I think. But yeah, it's the one question I have. How would he do against a John Jones? If somebody looks at him and thinks, I can just take you down. Who do I think could take him down? What happens when he's not the better grappler? How can he respond to that?
Well, what's his submission game like off his back?
We haven't really seen, but it's pretty damn good off top control. His takedowns are good.
And a lot of submission artists do kind of tend to do their best work in their guard rather than from top,
Isn't his dad a jiu-jitsu
pro?
pro?
Man.
Because his jiu-jitsu's his first discipline.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that he got into.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure his dad
I can't remember.
either was a coach or a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's grown up with jiu-jitsu being his base in the house. I'm sure it's good. It's just, you know what I mean? It's a British fighter. The wrestling's always going to be that question mark, particularly when you've got a Curtis Blades, a John Jones, one of them obviously coming through and dominating at the high school level, and then very clearly applying that wrestling skill to the sport of MMA. The other guy, Division 1, All-American, just as big as you, been wrestling ever since he was fucking 7-8 years old. That's the only style that I think gives Aspinall a problem.
Even then, like I think Blades, I don't know how that fight's gonna go, but I kind of like the John Jones fight at this stage.
I like the
but
Cyril Gunn
let's
fight.
be honest. Do you think Jones takes one more after Miocic?
If he thinks he can beat the guy, yeah. I don't think he wants to fight Pavlovich. Because, listen, John Jones isn't afraid of anybody, but I think he's smart enough to go, Pavlovich is a huge problem without a huge amount of hype behind him from casual audiences. I don't get a huge amount of legacy from that. Not initially. Like, that's the kind of legacy I might get in 5 years' time when I beat the guy, retire, and then he becomes the champ and dominates. But it's that style, man, because Pavlovich just makes you make that choice. It's like, you either survive that first 5 or 6 minutes, and he's probably going to tire out a little bit, and then you can kind of start initiating your thing, or you catch him as he's charging in, but he's forcing you to make that choice. And John Jones is not a guy that likes having to throw caution to the wind and trade. He likes to have everything set up. And he's older, he's slower, he's only had one fight at heavyweight. It wasn't against the hardest hitting guy.
And he only really wants to I think he wants to just move on out of the limelight.
Yeah. In a more immediate sense, I think Garn's a great fight for Aspinall. Because I don't think that there's a speed advantage. If there is, it's not by much. I 100% think that Aspinall's got more power. Maybe not stronger physically, but I think he's got more power in his shots.
Yeah.
I think he's a much better technical boxer. I think he's a far better grappler. Like, we know he can beat Spivak. If Garn beats Spivak and then he fights Garn, I think he beats Garn reasonably comfortably.
I think he just takes Garn down and submits him.
I think he can outbox him as well.
He probably can, but I don't think he'll even fuck around with that.
Garn's got a good reach, and he's light on the feet, and he throws the jab quite nicely. But a lot of his other shots are quite... He loops a lot of stuff.
Yep.
You don't... Not a lot of like combos until he's really got a guy hurt. It's a lot of just single shot and
he
move.
relies on being the faster guy in there as well. With Aspinall, that's not necessarily the case.
Aspinall has head movement.
Yep.
He can slip on the inside of those jabs.
Garn
take
freezes
advantage.
a little bit when he's intimidated by a guy's skill set. The takedowns are going to be there for Aspinall. And I don't think Aspinall's going to... Why keep the fight somewhere where it's reasonably competitive, where I could just make it an absolute bloodbath?
True. Also, he can just mix it up and have Garn guessing.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting though. You know what? I know that fight's a little bit down the summer calendar, but I'm curious to see what happens with Spivak Garn. Because Garn did kind of get mercifully exempted from these kind of style matchups.
Yeah.
And now that he's obviously lost his second title shot the way he did, he's not getting that fun, favourable fight to get you back up there. He's getting Spivak.
He's getting
if he wins that, it's, he gets rewarded with having to fight Aspinall. If he wins that, he probably still has to fight, Curtis Blades?
Honestly,
someone like that? I mean...
I'm going to go ahead and assume that John Jones fights Miocic, and if he beats Miocic, retires, rescinds the title, and they make Aspinall versus the winner of Garn Spivak for the new title.
Maybe. Depends if both Jones and Stipe retire. Well, actually, no, I think they'd still do that because they don't
If Stipe wins, obviously Stipe is probably going to fight again, and he'll fight the winner of Aspinall versus the winner of Garn and Spivak.
Yeah.
But if Jones does beat Stipe, then I think it's going to be a vacant title.
You're forgetting about Pavlovich, dude.
I'm not. I think they'll make the winner of Garn Spivak against Aspinall the title shot.
I think
Pavlovich will be right there for a title shot soon.
I think if you have Stipe and Jones both retire after November, I think you have to have Pavlovich be the A side. He's burning through everybody.
Yeah,
right now,
as if the rankings meant anything, and sure, as a sports fan, Pavlovich would be one half of that vacant title matchup, but it's the UFC.
Well,
and they're big pieces of shit. And I think they'll do the face off Aspinall against the winner of Garn Spivak cage in the cage at the end of UFC Paris, and then we'll have Jones Miocic, and then we'll have a vacant belt, and I think they'll take the hype from that.
I think it depends on a factor.
God.
Jones fights Stipe in November.
Mm-hmm.
The Garn Spivak fight is in August or September?
Something like that, yeah.
Around that time. Let's say you get a finish or the winner doesn't take the largest amount of damage. You could probably have Aspinall versus Garn booked for... Or Aspinall versus Spivak booked for December, January time?
Well, I think the UFC brass are thinking about it the same way I am. I don't think they're gonna... Oh, wait, sorry, wait, what's the spanner in the works then?
What I'm saying is that it's such in close proximity to when Jones might retire after that November fight anyway, that I think they have that as a title eliminator, and then have the heavyweight title fight booked for April, and it would be Pavlovich versus the winner of Aspinall versus...
So I don't think Pavlovich is going to sell as many pay-per-views as the winner of Spivak Garn. And I think the fact that you can turn it around at the end of the year, start of the new year, they don't want to have a vacant belt. They want to be able to sell pay-per-views and do the hype. And fighting for a vacant belt doesn't sell as well as having an actual champion. Pavlovich versus a champion is going to sell pay-per-views. Pavlovich for a vacant belt does not sell as many pay-per-views as a Spivak or a Garn coming off the UFC Paris win versus an Aspinall.
Okay. I get your point. We don't need to talk about Marcin Tybura too much because the guy knows his level. It's just he was in against a much higher level guy. You can't really say too much.
He's a good heavyweight. He's a really good heavyweight. Just there's not even really a lot to talk about in terms of his performance because there wasn't much to see. Like, what are we going to critique?
Let's keep on English positives. So let's move down to Nathaniel Wood.
Alright.
This was a great fight.
This
was a really, really close fight. Seriously close fight. I was watching this at the pub and all the people were with, it was about a 50-50 split of who thought Feely won, who thought Nathaniel Wood won.
How'd you score it?
I thought Wood won, but I'm biased.
Who'd you give the first round to?
I went first and third Wood, second Feely.
See, I didn't think the knockdown was worth the damage later on.
No. And the thing is, there's knockdowns and knockdowns. Like, look at when Wood dropped Feely. That was like, you're on the verge of finishing the fight.
Yeah.
Feely's knockdown on Wood was, listen man, sometimes you catch a guy, he's coming in a little bit. It's like, there's flash knockdowns and then there's, you've really hurt the guy. Third round I didn't think was in dispute. I just thought Feely looked like he'd just taken a bit more damage, didn't quite have the same energy.
The leg kicks were starting to add up.
Well, I kind of feel like Wood found the holes. Feely's a big guy for featherweight, man. I mean, that's a tall, long, rangy dude to fight when you're a former bantamweight and certainly not the biggest featherweight. And you can do it. We know you can do it because Volkanovski does it. But there's a real skill and you've got to figure out how you get those reads and how you can start getting in what's working. And I'm really impressed with Wood, man. I'm impressed with him every time he fights.
Yeah, even losing that second round, that was a tough as nails veteran standing in the pocket to land that like hook. Wood had a good entry. He was landing some good shots there, and it's one of those like, how do you do that better? It's like, well, you can either not roll the dice and not risk it, or.
Do you think that if he really wants to move up, like start looking at like top 10, that kind of range, is he just a bit too small? Because I know that Volkanovski's small, but Volkanovski's a big fucking dude. You know what I mean? He's stocky.
Volkanovski's short. He's not small.
Yeah.
Wood's small.
Because he can beat these guys, but it's like
if he does want to make 35, fair enough. But I would have said that probably if I had to be like, what's your division? I probably would have said bantamweight. You know?
Yeah.
But I guess at bantamweight he did look a little vulnerable at times. I mean, obviously he's getting dropped at featherweight, but a little different. He doesn't look as drained. Maybe it's better for him. He's still kind of a young guy. Was he like mid to late 20s now?
Yeah, he's not old. He's not old.
He could foreseeably get bigger. Who knows? I mean, if Brad Pickett is okay with him moving up to featherweight, then I'm okay with him moving up to featherweight ultimately.
Listen,
I think he's too small for the elite right now? Yeah.
It's just there's certain things, unless he adds a real offensive wrestling game, which obviously would help negate some of that, particularly once you can kind of get inside. It's going to be a tough ask. It's like, I felt he was clearly a technically better fighter at this point in his career than Feely was. The success Feely had was because Feely's 5'11", maybe 5'10".
Yeah,
Tall fucking guy, and he's all arms and legs. There's a lot of strike radius he's got on Nathaniel Wood before Nathaniel Wood's in striking distance, and it just makes things tough. But it was a great fight. This, and I thought Danny Roberts versus what was his name? Jenkins.
Slugganor.
Yeah.
I thought it began with a P.
Parsons.
Jesus Christ, we did our homework, so
oh man. The Danny Roberts fight and this fight I thought were the two best fights. But obviously we'll talk about the Danny Roberts fights and the not so good for England. Continuing on the very good for Britain, although maybe not England. Big win for Paul Craig, man.
As an English Brit, this was good for me. I was very excited for this.
Looks a little. I mean, he's never going to be the best striker in the world. And it took him...
Didn't look terrible, though. And Imavov's not like...
Imavov?
Sorry. Muniz isn't like... It's not like he has no stand-up game.
This is true.
And if you're not fighting Muniz, you're probably using the stand-up to get that entry for the level change a lot sooner anyway.
Well, either way, stand up regardless. As soon as Paul Craig realised that at middleweight he might just actually be able to run through these people, take them down and get on top, this became a really easy fight. It's just going to start setting takedowns up, getting on top of people, and either beating them up or choking them out. I'm in full support of this.
Like Scottish Roxanne Modafferi.
He's just such a good dude as well, man. Like he's got such a good following here. He seemed to make the cut well. He didn't look too drained. He ate a few right hands and he didn't get wobbly.
Yeah.
I think he just might be one of those people, man, where he was just fighting guys that were just a little bit too big. Particularly for his style, you know. I know he's 6'2", but he was never like the most bulky 6'2".
No, it's you know, he's a jiu-jitsu guy. His long
bit of wrestling,
long limbs work best in the submission game. He was never there to be a rangy striker. Although the kicks are looking better. Like he is looking better and better every. I know what you're saying. It's like, how are you gonna fancy him against the fucking Whittaker or something? It's like, well, if he can pull out the fucking bag like he did against, you know, the Jamal Hills of the world, why not?
Well, the difference is if he can take guys down at this weight class, that for me is what changes everything. Light heavyweight was a succession of I'm going to put myself in a terrible position and just hope.
I mean, honestly though, how many wins would he need against more or less the right guy to even get a title shot at this stage?
Well, I mean, Muniz was ranked, no?
Yeah.
So he's already ranked at middleweight now.
But how many wins? Let's assume that Adesanya wins out, and he's looking at trilogies and rematches. How many wins?
It's about getting the right wins.
So let's even fucking sort of sound out
Between
some
3 and 4.
hypothetically. Even just going like best case scenario.
I'd say minimum 3, maximum 5.
And you definitely can't get near a Vittori or anyone like that.
Vittori would be difficult. But that's the only thing. I mean, if you go to the top of the division, I don't see him beating Strickland. I don't see him beating Cannonier. I don't see him beating Vittori. I don't see him beating Whittaker or Duplessis.
I don't see him beating any of these guys, but I just feel like stylistically, like Vittori is the absolute fucking worst for him.
Yeah, Brendan Allen wouldn't be easy. Hamzat wouldn't be easy. Costa wouldn't be easy. I mean, none of them.
Hamzat's only got one toe in the fucking division.
None of these fights are going to be easy, man, for him. But he's Paul Craig. He's making money. He's winning fights. He's getting bonuses.
So let's say hypothetically he could get, with the next fight, into the sort of Brendan Allen discussion of I'm going to sit out and see how it shakes out and what happens, and he gets, say, a DDP, a Whittaker, a Strickland, something like that, manages to beat him. Is that going to be enough for a title shot? Can he do it off the back of a 3-fight win streak in the division?
Yeah, if you get the right names.
And if Izzy wins out and there's no fresh blood to fight?
Potentially. But it depends. If his names are Brendan Allen, Jack Hermanson, and then a Paulo Costa on the back of a 2-fight losing streak, then no, he's not getting a title. If his names are like, he taps Aliskerov, then he taps Hamzat, and then he fucking taps, I don't know, Whittaker or Duplessis or something like that, then yeah, the guy's going to get a fucking chance. And sometimes you get lucky. Maybe a guy gets injured.
You know what, like, yeah, because we're talking about, like, best case scenario, like, come on, it's not going to fucking happen, bro. You know, there was a time when people write off Bisping, so what the fuck do we know?
The biggest issue for Paul Craig is he can't fight in America still.
How come?
Because he's not vaxxed.
That's really?
Yeah, they've still got the no entry for unvaccinated.
Interesting.
So that's the only thing he can't take those short notice. Like a guy's dropped out 3 weeks. Can he take the fight? But if Paulo Costa was to pull Sigi buggers and pull out of his fight against Costa in Abu Dhabi, Paul Craig could step up. He's grinning. I can't finish a rhyme that would make it sound like a football chant. But we will move on.
Yeah.
More good news.
The chant's going in the bin.
Yeah. Bit more good news for the English fighters. Let's talk about Chris Duncan against Eshmuz. Solid win. Against a guy with a broken arm. He still got the fucking solid win.
Yeah, I mean, still a very dangerous guy. Broke his arm in the first round, but still. I don't know how much like Duncan had actually picked up on that.
He had picked up on nothing.
Yeah, you have to respect the guy that like your things in front of you.
Also, nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal, man. I mean, Ashmuz was throwing fucking, you know, he was throwing the right hand with no setup. He was throwing kicks with no setup, and you can get caught with somebody just doing crazy stuff. But
I loved it when his corner were like, you have to like start throwing the left. He's like, I can't even make a fist.
Yeah. He's one of those. He's like, I'm being tough, but I'm not being quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, like, well, no, I think it was just more like when his like corner were like, "This is the advice we're going to give you," and he was just like, "This is bad advice. Okay, no more of this advice. I can't even make a fist with that arm. No. Okay, from now on, you understand that, and here on out, the advice will only be pertinent. Like,
no, but it makes it a clean sweep for the Scots.
Yep.
Good.
Talking about,
I was just going to say a Mick Parson.
Oh, he looked fucking great. He looked fucking great. So did Pogues, to be fair, in the first round.
Wasn't a bad heavyweight fight, this one.
Yeah.
Wasn't a bad heavyweight fight. So what's that? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 English victories, I'm counting. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one. I'm going to double check. I thought I did all this beforehand. I thought I knew.
So we had the Irish loss. And then I did say I worried about Meatball if Stolyarenko could take her down. She was going to get that armbar.
We both said we were worried about Meatball.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Woods, Paul Craig. Oh, Leron Murphy. That was a good fight against Kulabau. Yeah, he did well.
Another close fight, another good fight.
Seriously close fight. He won it clearly in the end, though. I thought we just outworked him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mick Parkin, not Mick Parson, is the name. And that was the British victories. Let's talk about the British defeats. Molly McCann was given a fighter that was 1-4 in her 5 UFC fights, and she gets tapped within 2 minutes. Against a girl whose only threat is that she's got arm bars.
Well, she also has that other threat that, like, she doesn't really give you the opportunity to get out of the armbar. She will look to hyperextend your elbow immediately because she's just done with this Thai bullshit where, like, people get out of stuff. This is 2 now for her where she's just literally ripped a woman's arm apart. And I gotta be honest, even as a biased MMA fan against her, I'm like, you're doing the right thing. It's on the ref to stop the fight. It is what it is. Like,
No. Stolyarenko did the right things, but she was allowed to do the right things by Molly McCann. Where it's just like, come on, Molly. Like, you fought Tyler Santos, and you showed way better takedown defense and grappling defense than you've shown in this fight. Okay, you got... But nobody blamed you for being tapped by Blanchfield. And you showed way better defense against Blanchfield than you did against Stolyarenko. And maybe Stolyarenko's just suddenly put it together. Maybe she's stripped everything back. She's focusing just on what she does best in her game.
yeah.
And she's going to go on a 6-fight winning streak. But it was a sloppy takedown. And there was a lot of mistakes from Maddie. She had 2 or 3 opportunities to get the fuck out of that position. And she turned into the guard, did the right thing, got top control, and you could just see it. 1 arm in, 1 arm out. For 3 or 4 seconds. Didn't need 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like, man, did your coaches not go over the one thing to watch out for in these positions? Don't let this happen. And she lets this happen. And now she's saying she's dropping down to strawweight. I don't think that's the answer. She wasn't she wasn't manhandled on Saturday. That was poor technique.
Yeah.
The technique level does not go down at strawweight. You could say it's comparable, but it's not down. Look at the killers you've got who barely ranked. Tabitha Ricci isn't ranked. Gillian Robertson's already got a win over Molly McCann, unranked in the division. That girl that Gillian Robertson beat was undefeated beforehand. She looks like an insanely good grappler. And then you've got to deal with all the girls in the top 15, many of whom are either better strikers than you or just as good at grapplers, if not way better grapplers.
Maybe
than the
she's
person
just that scared of Nama Yunus.
I don't think it's anything to do with Nami.
Probably not, but
it's. Do you know? I think it's a mentality thing.
I think it buys you a bit more time as well. You know,
I don't think there was any pressure on her when she fought in London the first time because she wasn't a star yet, and she was coming off the back of one win beforehand, and she gets the great finish against a fighter that wasn't at the highest level. Then she repeats it again against Hannah Goldie, who is again not a fighter of the highest level. And again, no pressure. Now she's riding the wave. Then she goes to New York. Faces this just monumental step up in quality. Confidence gets shattered in a big moment. And now she's back in London, and I think maybe she thought, I've got to win this one, I've got to get everything back on track, it's all in my favour, and sometimes having everything set in your favour makes it even harder to perform.
yeah.
It was disappointing, without a doubt, because we all like Molly. And it was not a good loss. There were a couple of good losses. I'm going to put it out there. I think Jai Herbert, less so Jai Herbert, but to a certain extent Jai Herbert, and certainly Davy Grant, I think they got screwed.
Yeah, well,
Davy Grant got screwed, man. I thought he won that fight.
it's hard to say. It was such a close fight for me.
It's close, but I mean, the third round, there's no question about it. I feel you have to give Davy Grant the first round. Second round, I get it. He gets controlled. There are good shots being landed, but I felt Davy Grant won it, man. He doesn't get the rub of the green with a lot of those results.
No. I didn't really I didn't know on the first, to be honest. I was kind of okay with it. Not okay with it. I was upset about it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like he'd been like robbed, but I don't know.
Jai Herbert, listen, I'll accept that the Jai Herbert Zion fight, that's a hard fight to score.
Yeah.
Round by round.
And then do you want to touch on Hot Chocolate or
Hot Chocolate?
yeah, Danny Roberts?
Oh, Danny Roberts.
I mean, we kind of talked about Sluggernaut a little bit. We did say we were going to talk about this one actually.
Listen, man, Danny Roberts has not got the chin for the sport anymore, man.
Nah.
And he's not got the skills for the UFC level. But credit to the guy, man. Probably his last fight in the UFC, we got to think, on the back of the losing streak he's on.
I think so.
He went out swinging. Out going for it, man. I mean,
Always been a fan. It's just why it hurts so much when he loses.
He put it on the line. It didn't pay off. And you could say there's 2 seconds left in the round. Just let him get to the end of the round. He'd been wobbled numerous times in that round. He'd been hurt a few times. And him and Parsons were both trading back and forth. But it didn't feel like Parsons was getting hurt. It felt like Parsons was landing all of the damaging shots.
Yeah, and he's essentially a fluffed up lightweight, so it's a bit...
Great fight, though. The card needed it as well.
Fun fight, yeah.
The card needed this because we'd had a lot of decisions up until this point. And sometimes you need just two guys to fucking bite down on the mouthpiece and produce some entertainment. A shame, though, because it was this was when it started looking really bad for the British fighters. A lot of losses started stacking up.
Again, Aspinall for me outweighs everything. I can live with it.
There were some non-English involved fights. Muradov versus Barberena, pretty much what we expected.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is that thing where, like, you know, he took that time off after GM3, set up his own fight league. Like, you know, how much is his heart really in it? And
enough to beat a middleweight Barberena.
Yeah, he was a very durable, tough, intelligent, gritty guy. So, you know, not a bad fight. Not a bad fight.
Fucking great opener to this card as well on the prelims. Perez versus Filio.
Oh yeah.
Terrific comeback. I mean, Perez thought he was doing everything right, not going down into the ground, rocking him, just couldn't quite get him out. And then you get tapped.
Yeah.
All in all, not as good as other London cards, but I still had fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice having MMA on at a time where I could watch it Saturday evening.
We've had a few of those recently. With Abu Dhabi and Paris coming up,
Yep.
we've got a couple more. They're giving some love. They're giving some love to us Europeans.
It's nice as well because it's not a rich summer of sport, and now that the Ashes got fucking washed out.
Yeah, that was bullshit.
Well, no, it is what it fucking is. The amount of times we've had our blushes saved by the rain during the Ashes in the UK. It's bound to happen, and frankly, shouldn't have pissed away the first 2 tests. So it is what it is.
Hey, baseball took some time to learn.
No, it's fun though. It's been fun.
This is true.
It's been fun, and let's be honest, cricket's fucking shit. So
Cricket
the only
being
time
fun
I ever take a fleeting interest is when it's the Ashes. And when the Ashes aren't shit, like, and there's nothing at literally. Well, that's not true. There's the Women's World Cup.
It's not good enough level though at the moment, dude. I want
In a somewhat devoid of sport, we're not going to be that critical.
I want to enjoy
I'm
it.
just saying that, like, it's not, and it's on at weird hours as well.
I'd like someone other than the USA to win it. That would be a nice change.
Yeah.
I think they're the only team that's won it.
That can't be right. Didn't Brazil win it?
They've won 6. I don't know how many they've been, but they've won the last 6.
I think it's probably been more than you realise. There's no way. It's just, maybe I'm wrong. Leave a comment.
6 times.
There's no
4.
secret episodes to release now.
That
There's
goes
no reason to
24
not
years
comment
back.
to spite me. Yeah.
So that goes to 1995. Did they do the Women's World Cup before 1995?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Well, since 1995, it's been America that's won it. It would be nice to see someone else win it. You know what would also be nice?
I thought Brazil had that absolute fucking Vindabar that, like, what was her fucking name? She just used to single-handedly destroy teams. Anyway, well, my point is, not a lot going on this summer. All the big fights are kind of geared up for like autumn, winter already. When's
There's some huge fights in summer.
name one?
Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling.
Within the UFC, yeah, but like it's what I'm kind of saying. Like UFC is what we've got for the summer.
Oh, is in other sporting things.
It's nice that they've been putting shit on like at a normal hour for us, but like it's been a weird summer for that. Like if I was an American, I'd be pretty fucking bored because they don't even give a fuck about cricket or women. So
and it's just pre-season in the NFL, which is boring as fuck.
I get into it anyway. Come on, did you not enjoy the draft?
I always.
Did you not enjoy free agency?
No. I enjoy all of that stuff. But
You're not enjoying the OTAs.
Once it gets to June, that's why I'm a little bit like I'm taking 2 months away.
Are you-
Because in August I'm going to care again, but for June and July, I'll catch up on the news. It's all good.
I watch OTA footage. I read up on fucking reports and shit. I enjoy pre-season.
I just want everyone to be fit and healthy, and Tyreek Hill not to be suspended for 6 games for slapping a dude on the back of the head on a boat. And if it turns out that none of our players get suspended for gambling, that would also be great, because a lot of players getting suspended for gambling.
It's very easy to get caught.
The
Unless you
rules
Paul
are very
Merson.
clear.
Paul Merson used to get away with murder.
The rules are very clear. If you're in the NFL facility, bet on nothing. If you're outside the NFL facility, don't bet on football. How did they fuck this up? It's so stupid. I'm so pleased I'm not a
I
Detroit
don't know.
Lions fan.
Why does Ja Moran keep putting his fucking gun on social media? Some people are just wrong.
This is true.
I'm one of them.
But
I appreciate what's going on there.
But we do have the UFC to look forward to.
Yeah.
This weekend is UFC 291. UFC 291.
Yep.
In Salt Lake City, Utah. At altitude. I'm not happy about this. How do you feel about this?
It's a challenge. It's a different challenge.
It's a challenge for some people.
So obviously Gaethje trains at altitude.
Grew up at altitude. Was raised at altitude. was moulded by it.
Where's the other thing?
He
though,
didn't
like,
see the sea level until he was a man. By that time, it was blinding.
Well, some people say the best thing to do is to live and train, or to live at sea level and to train at altitude and recover at sea level. So potentially, you know, Poirier shouldn't have too much of a drop off if he gets out to Utah early enough and gives himself time to acclimate.
On the first episode of UFC Embedded,
Yep.
he was still in Florida.
Not great. The other thing though is it is a 5-round fight.
Doesn't make it better.
Could likely go deep. It's just I don't know how much of an issue cardio is going to be for Poirier versus damage landed and damage taken. Both these guys are going to inflict enough damage on each other, as they did in the previous fight. There's so much of it's going to come down to who got the good work in early when it gets down to being a war of attrition, which it surely will. You know, last time out, that was Poirier. Gaethje's a very different fighter. I just think it really boils down to more. It is a factor. It's not that it's a non-factor. If I was going to have like sort of a top 5 most important things in the fight, it's probably 5 or maybe even just not in the top 5.
So, the last time that we had a card at altitude, in this exact same stadium, every single fight was severely affected by altitude, with the exception of Kamaru Usman and Merab Dashvili.
Oh, wait.
Well, Leon Edwards clearly got affected by the altitude. Like, if we're talking, he might have still won.
I thought you were going to say
he might have still
Usman
won
against Dvalishvili, and I was like, I've remembered that wrong.
No, Dvalishvili in his fight and Usman in his fight
Yeah.
did not seem to succumb in the same way to everybody else. Dvalishvili is a freak of nature.
Yep.
Usman trains at altitude. Poirier, his best skill is his ability to take a fight into that deep water and out-punish you. If he doesn't have the cardio to be able to do that effectively, and if he's not prepared for that, my understanding is he's been sleeping in an altitude tent, and my understanding is that sleeping in an altitude tent does about jack shit.
Well, it's basically the reverse of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Train at altitude, recover at sea level. And again, not an expert, just a moron. But everyone that I've ever heard talk about it kind of insinuates the same thing. You want to train under duress and force your blood cells to become more efficient in binding to oxygen molecules, and then recover at sea level so that you're still kind of feeling that that disparity, that effect. You're still basically you're just making training more difficult, but you still recover under optimum conditions. That's always like what I've been told. So
That sounds sensible.
the altitude tent would theoretically be a detriment.
I don't like having to talk about this, dude.
Yeah,
if this
fair
fight
enough.
was at sea level, if this fight was in Vegas, if this fight was in so many other places, we would just be talking about the skill level. By which point, one of the things that we'd definitely be saying is that I think Gaethje's improved more since their last fight than Poirier.
Well, that's what I want to talk about, to be honest. And I think that's the biggest factor. Is that Gaethje's not going to give him the same opportunity to nullify his leg kicks and work in his own leg kicks, and he's not going to be as open on the shots to be countered as he was in the previous fight. I still think Poirier is good enough that I don't know who's going to win this fight. I just don't think that the knock-on effect on their cardio should, in my opinion, be as much of a factor as a multitude of other things, you know? Can Poirier still... He's not going to have to avoid the leg kicks in the same way that he did in the first fight. But when they're thrown, they're going to be just as nasty and they're going to be harder to read. And can Poirier put in the same body work and low kicks that he did in the first fight to start slowing Gaethje down enough that it makes it easier to read him on those wild entries?
I actually think if there's one area that Poirier has improved in the most since their last fight, it's his ability to stay out of distance and check leg kicks. He has shown an improvement in that.
Well, he's not going to get leg kicks from distance. He's not going to get naked leg kicks. And he did a little bit in the first fight, but it's when, Gaethje was closing distance and just kind of
Yeah.
He wasn't throwing them from far away, because he never does. But the most important thing is that Gaethje's so much more educated with his footwork, his entries, and his really just like the way he fires off the first two punches and kind of keeps things a little bit more tighter and defensively. That I think he's going to be able to find it easier to close in and hide those leg kicks. He's going to be having more success with the hands. I don't think he's going to give Poirier the same entries, one to counter and two to just to tee off on him when he has a lazy entry into a flurry. It's going to be very difficult. Poirier's going to have to be on his fucking game. But I still think he is a slightly better fighter than Gaethje. It's just that because they've both got that tough as all hell power puncher kind of style, and now that they really are both very, very fucking technical MMA athletes, it's just I'm so excited for this fight.
I think
it's a bullshit title, but whatever.
Fundamentally, I don't think Gaethje will ever be as good a boxer as Poirier.
No, Poirier's hands are ridiculous. We saw that against Holloway.
I also think that Gaethje, you could see it a little bit in the Oliveira fight. And I think it might end up playing a huge factor. They're both guys that have slightly relied on being seriously tough and having good chins. But I feel Poirier's been more intelligent about only using that when he has to throughout a much longer stage of his career than Gaethje has. Gaethje's maybe got, less than 10 fights where he's gone, I'm going to stop fighting like a madman and just going blow for blow. Something like that.
Well, wait, fights that he's done that, or fights
No, since he's stopped doing that. I mean, it's post-Poirier, so we're talking...
It's really it was probably the last two fights more than anything.
No.
Oh, no, three, because I guess I'm not counting Oliveira, so...
No, I'd say you look at 3 first-round knockouts, Tony, Khabib...
Well, Tony was the new style. That was...
Yeah. Well, also, I feel he wasn't really taking too much. He didn't take damage against Barbosa. He didn't take damage against Vic. He didn't take damage against Cowboy.
But
so
that wasn't for merit of an adapted style, though. That was just landing those heavy hooks.
True. But the point I'm trying to say is that I feel like Gaethje has definitely worn his chin more.
Yeah.
And even in that second Poirier fight, even in the Michael Johnson fight, you could see this isn't a guy that just is like, we're not talking about a Max Holloway, where he can just walk 3 punches and never get dropped. Like, Gaethje can get rocked. And he puts himself in the position to get rocked. It's possible. Oliveira rocked him multiple times quite easily. I think Poirier can hurt him. And I think maybe he can hurt him a little bit easier. But what I'd love to see from Poirier, and it's one of his big weaknesses, is for me the key to getting at Gaethje is the body.
Yeah.
Like, he's susceptible to the body.
It's how Alvarez did it.
It's how Alvarez did it. Other guys have had success or hurt him using body attacks. He tends to pull the guard quite high up when he's trying to avoid stuff. He likes walking in with the high guard.
He likes setting up his leg kicks with the high guard.
Yeah. Poirier can throw really nice kicks to the body from that southpaw stance. I'd like to see him do that. If he can throw some teeps, it's not really his style, but that would be something I'd love to see. And just chip away at him a little bit. Just try and take as much air out of the tire as possible.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, the altitude is going to be a motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, even if that wasn't a factor, that would be the fucking game plan.
Yeah.
I think, like, the first 2 rounds are crucial whether you win or lose. Slow him the fuck down. Low kicks, body work, it's essential.
And Poirier tends to be a headhunter. So that's something that I hope they
does, but to be fair, that is what people usually give him. He does go hand heavy, which is crazy because he does have... obviously, people will bring up stuff like the Islam fight, but he has got a very good ground game. It's just he's not fucking Islam Makhachev, Dagestani wrestling style ground game. He can fucking submit people from his guard. I would love to see him throw more kicks. But, he's such a technician, and people give him that room to operate with his hands. He takes it. It'd be interesting to see because the new style Gaethje's a lot more educated, defensive. Does a much better job of like setting things up. So
Possibly more motivated. Both guys want to have one more shot at the title.
yeah,
But
I think
Poirier's
motivation
made-
level, these guys have bounced back in responding to adversity about as well as you could hope.
They
is gonna be a
have,
fucking fight.
But there's still that element where Poirier, if he retired after this fight, his family's set for life. He's probably going to get an ESPN desk job. You know what I mean? Like, his
Keep selling
future,
that sauce.
his future is set. Gaethje's had the interim belt. He's had many of the same accolades that you could give Dustin Poirier, but he hasn't had those Conor McGregor fights leading into the big title fight. When he got his title fight, it was more of a Oliveira's on his run. You got that bounce back win against
Hooker.
against Chandler.
Oh fuck yeah.
You know, Poirier's with those Conor McGregor fights made a lot of money and became a star, and didn't just get paid well for the McGregor fights. He got a very good paycheck as a result when he fought Oliveira for the belt, which led into another very nice paycheck going into the Chandler fight. So he's kind of, that's the only thing that might come down to it. If both guys have really worn the crap out of each other and they're both equally tough in so many regards, is that going to be the difference? Is there just going to be that slight motivation where Gaethje knows it's just like, man, I need to still hit a higher goal to be able to kind of walk away a made man from this shit?
He has also got the benefit of being part of a much tighter, smaller team. As great as ATT is, and as much attention as you would get as being one of their like premier like fighters, like stable fighter, but you know, Trevor Whitman's the fucking shit, and you've got a very good team, and you're training there with Usman's like.
But the only thing I'd say is that a smaller team, you get fewer looks.
Yeah.
ATT's not going to struggle to find guys that can replicate Gaethje's style.
But do you not feel that out of all the Trevor Whitman fighters, Gaethje was like the least representative of stand-up style, and he's finally starting to get on the same fucking page?
No, I felt he's on the page since the Tony Ferguson fight. I think the only thing that you have to factor in, and this is a criticism I would say of Gaethje, is his boxing looks very good against guys that I would describe more as brawlers. So against Tony Ferguson, he's very technically incorrect. He was able to piece him apart. But if you look at what he actually used to do that, it was mostly just slip and ripping hooks. It wasn't a huge amount of feinting and variation.
But the timing and the footwork was so much improved. And let's be honest, like coming into the physio fight, we were like, don't really give this guy a chance. He's going to get outclassed. And he just made it a very uncomfortable fight for him. He's just got better at doing his style. He's picking up these Trevor Whitman traits of really making these reads and being a much smarter fighter. And
well,
okay,
Fiziev's very technical. I'll tell you what I think the issue with Fiziev is. It was a really impressive performance from Gaethje.
Yeah.
But one thing that was stood out to me was the Fiziev's not the biggest guy for this division. And it felt like he could never quite... He was just never in range. You know what I mean? It always felt like he just couldn't get on the inside. He couldn't stay on the inside. He was
similar build though to Poirier.
Poirier's taller though. Better reach.
What's Fiziev?
Fiziev's small, man.
I think he was like 5'8", 5'9".
He's surprisingly small.
Fair
I'm
enough.
look this up now. He's not a tall guy for the...
Because obviously Poirier used to be like a ranked featherweight, but you know he is every fucking inch a lightweight right now.
Fiziev's 5'8".
5'8". Poirier's like 5'9" or 5'8".
Poirier is...
But
5'9". But Fiziev doesn't have a big reach. He's very stocky, you know what I mean? Poirier's got a longer striking distance.
yeah, and he's no slouch as an athlete, but I just feel like Fiziev's got more pop. So I don't know. For me, I feel like as far as Gaethje's preparing, he probably is gonna have a similar sort of entry distance and counter distance that he did in the Fiziev fight.
It's going to be a little less aggressive though. One of Fiziev's issues is he became kind of a walking punching bag. Like, he was always moving forward.
And Poirier's not going to do that. And
No.
Poirier's
going
to
play with
that
distance.
right, and his left's heavy too.
His footwork's good. He's going to move around. He's going to be mindful of the kicking distance.
Oh, sorry, cock that left and the right's good too.
Yeah. It's going to be a good fight. I really hope altitude doesn't affect it. My heart says Poirier. My head says Gaethje's just got the right rubs of the green going in his favour. And I think that might be a factor. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Poirier chins him in 4 minutes.
Yeah,
maybe Gaethje's just can't take the damage anymore.
I think it's a given it's going to be a war. It's going to be very technical as long as both guys actually show up for the fight, like, ready. And I feel like on paper Poirier should win. Altitude being irrelevant as far as I can see it for 5 rounds. And it's an unpickable fight because anything could happen.
Anything can happen?
I don't even know if it will go the distance. It really shouldn't. They're not those kind of fighters. As much as they've changed since the first, which was a 4th round finish.
We're going to find out on Saturday. Co-main event. Probably a title eliminator. Almost certainly a title eliminator. Blachowicz taking on Pereira. Pereira's first fight at light heavyweight. First fight since the knockout, which was only 3 months ago. Blachowicz, he's been out in Utah for 2 weeks. Says he's feeling good. Pereira, still going to be taller than him. Still going to be bigger than him. May even hit harder than him. Younger than him. But Jan's tricky.
Yep.
He's sneaky good in areas that people don't give him credit for.
Yeah, and
particularly at nullifying certain things. He's very good at nullifying leg kicks.
Yep.
He's very good at nullifying jabs. He can just, even though he's got the power, he's very happy to just have this patient kind of tippy-tappy Muay Thai fight. He knows how to win little exchanges. Okay, we're not doing damage, but I'm going to get one more off. I'm going to pick a target zone. His kicks, particularly the kicks to the body, even in an orthodox stance, he's so good at getting that front leg forward, digging it into the liver side. Really accurate with it. This isn't an easy fight for Pereira. Not 3 months after a flat cold knockout.
Well, also, Jan will frustrate deliberately because he wants you to rush in. Because those short hooks and those check hooks are, where he kind of does a lot of damage. He will take you down.
Speed's the only thing. I always think that when you have a guy moving up in weight classes, the advantage he has is speed.
Yes, but Jan lands a couple of shots and all of a sudden he gets those freezes and those moments. He has serious power. Even when people take things on the guard, like, kind of saw it against Reyes, like, the fight kind of slows down for Jan a little bit because people are just a little too cautious, a little too mindful. And, Pereira even said, like, walking into the Strickland fight, he was intimidated. He was scared of Strickland. How the fuck's he going to feel about Jan? And is Jan really going to get outclassed too much on the feet without taking too much damage, without thinking, like, fuck it, I'm just going to take this motherfucker down?
On a scale of Dashvili to Rockhold, how effective do you think this fight will be from the altitude? That's the scaling system we're going to use.
It's going to be hard to say. I'd say potentially like getting close to a Rockhold. It's just that I see Jan getting a takedown in every round if it goes the distance. He was surprised by Izzy's power coming up. I don't think he's going to fuck around with Pereira too much. If he can't frustrate to the level that he can like start landing some good shots himself and get some respect early on, I think he's just going to start chasing for level changes, like setting up with the hands and then just go. And at that point, it's a horrible man to have on top of you. It's going to be hard to say by the later rounds if it's just a grinding, grueling style or if it's the attitude.
Glover's going to have an effect as well. Having a guy that took the belt off Jan in your corner, giving you advice.
Do you think it... Well, yeah, sure. I don't know how relevant the advice is going to be because they've got completely different styles.
No, but
Glover's
Glover
not going to
rocked
be like,
him.
so when you take him down, do this.
Glover rocked him on the feet.
Yeah,
Caught
but
him with
also
a hook.
Yan was never going to take Glover down like in the same way that he's going to do with
True.
Pereira. It's a totally different fight. If anything, it's just going to fire up Blachowicz. She's just going to be like, yep, I get to beat 2 of you tonight. I'm fucking in.
The feature fight was going to be Aliskerov versus Costa. We now have Costa versus Hamzat confirmed in brackets. It's confirmed, but you won't believe it till they actually step into the octagon.
Yeah.
They've moved up as a result onto the main card. Michel Pereira taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I'm calling this a Luke Rockhold and a half in terms of affected by cardio, because there is no way Michel Pereira's style is going to be conducive to 1,000 meters above sea level. It's just not possible.
I want to agree with you, but at the same time, I've shat on that dickhead so many fucking times, and he only goes out and he does a little bit better each time, and he's finally won me over. Maybe this idiot prepared. Maybe he's ready. Maybe he is altitude ready. I don't know. Wonderboy though is an awful fight for anyone, and for a guy that fancies themselves as a big rangy striker, well, I've seen him get dumped before.
He'll take Wonderboy down though. That's the only factor.
He'll try. The other thing is with Wonderboy is he is weirdly good at getting up during like open mat takedowns. And the other thing is that if you try and you're not a great wrestler and you try and back him up to the fence and do it, well, it's kind of where he does some of his best work in terms of striking.
I'd favour Wonderboy.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's flashy, but he's very technically flashy, and he's good at taking flashy guys and just making them look a little foolish.
He's also smart as fuck, and he always works so much harder than anyone else you've ever fucking seen work hard.
40 years old though. Eventually he's gonna get old, but is it gonna be this weekend?
Leave it when I fucking see it. Wonderboy gets old before Costa gets in the cage with Hamzat, or Hamzat gets in the cage with Costa. Either way.
Okay, well, next up we've got Bobby Green taking on Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson's retirement fight.
Last fight before his imminent arrest. What's going on with this drink driving charge?
I have no idea, dude.
And all the aggression.
I don't want to read. It will make me sad. He should. I don't think he beats Bobby Green.
We already sacrificed Cain Velasquez to the MMA gods. I don't understand why we have to give more.
Because they love Mexican Americans.
Racist fucking MMA gods.
Tony Ferguson 4 years ago destroys Bobby Green. Tony Ferguson now hasn't got a hope. Bobby Green's going to box. He's going to keep it technical. He's going to hit him with combos. Tony Ferguson might go for the leg kicks. He might have success with the leg kicks.
Yeah.
I think.
Look, we're talking about the real conversation is: do you think it's going to be a good fight or a sad fight?
I think it's going to be a sad fight.
Do you think Tony Ferguson's ready for this fight?
I hope so. He looked ready for the Chandler fight. It's not impossible.
Assuming that he didn't flip cars recently drunkenly, and you actually believed in him at this point in his career, would you really feel that he was ready for this fight?
I'm not betting money on him.
Yeah, that's you don't want to shit on him. It's fair enough. I won't either. I guess.
They're two. Listen, on paper, it's a better matchup for Tony than feeding him to some young fucking killer. It's a good name. It's a guy that on paper
is it responsible to
beat.
let Ferguson fight?
He's a grown man though. He's gonna fight.
Barely. So he's a man in the midst of some turmoil.
Listen, here's the good thing about the Bobby Green fight. Bobby Green's a good fighter. He's not a huge power puncher. He's a slick boxer, can anti-wrestle a little bit. If he finishes Tony, it's not going to be a horrific finish. I don't think we're going to say, oh, Jesus Christ. He might just outclass him.
Yeah.
It's not a fight where you're looking at it just going like, man, this guy could do serious damage. So in that regard, it's not a bad fight. If it's his last fight. Unless he wins. And then maybe the T-Fergent still has hope.
No.
Last fight on the main card, Chiesa taking on Kevin Holland. It's a good clash of styles. Chiesa hasn't been in there in a hot minute, though.
Yep.
He's 37, 38, somewhere in that general range.
Generally
Not a great
does.
striker.
Generally does well being a significantly bigger guy.
Kevin Holland probably can get taken down by him, but he's fought better wrestlers. He's fought stronger wrestlers. He's fought more dangerous jiu-jitsu artists.
Well, yeah, Chiesa's jiu-jitsu is good, but it's less technical, more opportunistic in making the most of his size and length. And yes, Holland's size and length does mean he has longer limbs to isolate, but I just don't see Chiesa getting to those positions easily or cheaply.
I think it's going to be a physicality issue as well.
Yeah.
We've seen that Kevin Holland can get bullied around by really strong physical guys at the higher end of the weight class. Chiesa's a big guy, and it's not to say he's not strong. I'm sure he's very strong.
He is.
But I don't think he hasn't got Hamzat strength. He hasn't got that kind of Derek Brunson level of weight and top pressure.
He's not a sledgehammer, he's a smothering blanket kind of guy.
Yeah. I think Holland can survive. I think he can hurt him on the feet. And Chiesa's a bit rusty, I think. He has to be. There's no way he's going to be quicker at 38, and he didn't look quick against Sean Brady.
And not the best camp. Is he still at Sick Jitsu?
I think so.
Just not the best camp, let's be honest.
Let's take a quick look at the prelims. What are the standouts of the prelims on this card before we wrap it up? Gabriel Bonfim against Trevin Giles. That's a fun fight.
Yep.
Derek Lewis versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. There's no way that these guys are still standing if it goes past the first round. They're just going to fall over. It's going to be a draw. Kopylov versus Ribeiro. I'm in for that. That's fun. I don't know Darius Flowers, but Jake Matthews is always a good shout. Semmelsberg and Medic hiding on the early prelims.
Medic coming up to welterweight.
Yeah. Short notice replacement for Johan Lanus.
Okay, I'm in.
And Joanne Wood was meant to be fighting Priscilla Cachoeira. She's out. And steps Miranda Maverick. Looking to bounce back, get a win in the column. It's a good card. It almost doesn't need Costa versus Aliskerov. But if it had Costa versus Aliskerov, this card would be pretty hard to beat. We didn't talk about this. Have you changed your mind on the BMF, or do you still think it's unnecessary and stupid as fuck?
Unnecessary. I don't think
Unnecessary.
pay-per-views need title fights. The BMF worked okay as like a one and done. Let's not set a precedent. Honestly, if they ever do this again, it would be worth nothing to me. Right now, the only reason I care about the fight is it's a good fight.
It is a good fight. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
And that is a good lesson for us to leave things on. Guys, thanks for watching. If you're planning on doing the Barbenheimer double feature, Josh has done half of that feature.
I've done 2/3 of one half of that feature.
His advice
Not getting into
is
it.
stay hydrated.
Yeah, stay hydrated.
If you're doing both, I'd say probably do Oppenheimer first. Because then you can change your mind about Barbie.
Well, my friend was going to go see Barbie tonight and I couldn't go with him and everyone else.
You were
because I was
going to
doing
go
this.
with a male friend to see Barbie.
And his wife and some other male friends.
Sounds like you dodged a bullet.
No, they didn't go today. We're going to go another day.
Ah.
So hopefully I'm going to see that this week.
The worst part is that
I'm going to go rewatch Oppenheimer as well because I completely fucked up the last
I'm
hour.
going to want
by
you
being
to
fucked.
hate the movie, and you're going to fucking love Barbie. And you're going to come in on next week's show and be like, Barbie's so good.
You need to understand that I love even shit movies. And to be honest, a lot of people saying that Barbie's pretty fucking funny, worthwhile. I'm up for it.
You and I read different reviews. Guys.
The only bad reviews I've seen are people going like, I took my kids to see this movie and it was not appropriate. And I'm like,
From what I've heard, it isn't appropriate for a fucking...
it's not a kids movie.
It's a movie about fucking Barbie dolls.
It's not a kids movie though, is my point.
That's like saying we're going to make the Power Rangers and then have a very intrinsic fucking heroin addiction subplot running through it.
And I would fucking watch that.
You'd
Much
love it.
like I'm going to watch Barbie.
Doesn't mean it's objectively a good movie. Either way, whatever movies you watch, guys, we hope you enjoy. Enjoy the fights. We'll be back next week. And hit the like and subscribe, especially if you've watched this far. For fuck's sake, you've given us 90 minutes of your time. Hit a button. Peace.
Bye, Laurie. Bye, Dave.